Hey everyone, this is Pete, and just a simple video today, kind of a vlog, I guess you'd call it. I'm not entirely sure what I want to say, but given what I'm going to be talking about, I knew I wanted to say something, because I felt like it was important. Earlier today, I read the news that Billy from the channel The Game Chasers had sadly passed away after an all too short, or mercifully short, depending on how you look at it, battle with a brain tumour. I remember seeing the channel, the video on his channel a couple of weeks back about him being in the ER and being terrified of what was going to happen. And then a few days later, a follow-up video after he'd had some sort of surgery on his brain to investigate the condition. And then nothing else was heard after that. And today I logged onto YouTube and saw a bunch of videos from people that Billy knew and was close to, saying rest in peace in memory of Billy and that sort of thing. And I knew that obviously he'd passed away. Now, I didn't know Billy. I'd never contacted him directly. I think I may have got a reply from him on a YouTube comment once or twice, but I never spoken to him directly. I didn't know the Game Chasers. But nonetheless, that channel was important to me. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about why that was. And just the general situation, really. Now, the Game Chasers, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is a channel that was initially about game collecting. It was about chasing the bargains in flea markets and antique stores and that sort of thing, and coming away with treasures to add to your retro gaming collection. Both Billy and his co-host Jay were passionate retro gamers. They had very fond memories of growing up gaming, and part of it was they wanted to recapture that in the modern day with rebuilding the collections that they had as a kid and hunting down some games that they never had access to back in the day, and in some cases trying to find some very rare games as well that they always wanted to play, or had perhaps only learned about after they became very expensive, or that have become expensive in the years since they managed to score a copy on a flea market or something like that. Now, I first came across the Game Chasers channel probably, I guess, must have been 2014 or so. It was sometime around there. It was about 10 years or so ago. And at the time, I was working a pretty boring, pretty dead-end office job, and I wasn't feeling very creatively fulfilled. I wasn't having a terrible time. I wasn't being bullied or anything, and the job was reasonable, but I was bored. I was not having a good time, and when I'm bored and not having a good time, my mental health tends to suffer a bit. And so one day at work, because I was fortunate enough to have one of those desks that was in a corner with its back to a wall so no one could look over my shoulder, I decided that I would start watching some YouTube videos. Prior to that, I hadn't really made an effort to explore YouTube. I hadn't really watched any YouTube channels. I knew people who had favourite YouTubers at that point, but I'd never taken the time to explore them. I thought the whole YouTuber thing was a bit of a gimmick, and I wasn't sure I wanted to be involved with it. But one day at work, in the absence of being able to access any other forms of entertainment discreetly, I thought I would fire up YouTube and I would start exploring. And I started having a look around at the retro gaming content. I forget exactly who I saw first. It was some combination of Classic Gaming Quarterly, Pro Jared, Game Dave, Game Sack, Lazy Game Reviews, or LGR as he's known now, and various other things like that. And I discovered a sort of a rabbit hole that you could explore, and it branched off in all sorts of different directions, and you could find all these wonderful channels with people who were really passionate about retro gaming and retro computers, which is something I've always been very fond of. And I came across the Game Chasers one day, and I was immediately hooked. The Game Chasers is a YouTube channel like no other. They made the effort to make each episode of their YouTube channel, each video on their YouTube channel, have the production quality of a TV show. Now, a lot of this was down to Billy, who was a trained film editor, a trained filmmaker. He really knew his stuff. And he obviously wanted to make the channel compelling television. And it was. It really, really was. If you go back and watch even the very first episodes of the Game Chasers, they're still fantastic. They're still a wonderful watch. Billy and Jay and the other people who are involved in the channel at various points are all wonderful, interesting, likeable characters. And each episode has a clear story. If they went out and didn't find anything, sometimes that makes a good story, but more often than not, they would wait and they would incorporate that lengthy search process into the next episode when they did have something interesting to show off. And yeah, it's really compelling viewing. And in more recent years, they expanded their remit a little into toy chasing as well, into hunting down 80s toys, things like G.I. Joe, Star Trek toys, Star Wars figurines, that sort of thing. So if you have the slightest bit of nostalgia for 1980s computer games, video games, and general tat, then it's a wonderful channel to get involved with. And like I say, I was immediately compelled by this channel, and it became quite important to me. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about things like parasocial relationships and so on, and I don't for a second believe that Billy and Jay were my friends because I watched their YouTube channel or anything. But one thing the Game Chasers in particular showed me, and a few channels that I discovered as a kind of offshoot of them, one thing that it made me feel was a bit less alone. Because retro gaming, retro computing has been my hobby for as long as I can remember. I mean, it's been my hobby using what we now call classic games systems and home computers and consoles since they were current. Like I've still got the Super NES that I got for Christmas one year. One of the chips is burnt out on it, so it doesn't work properly, so I've had to replace it. And I've now got the Mister, obviously, as well. But in my loft, I've still got the Atari 8-bit and ST computers I grew up with. Behind me, you can see the Atari ST games that my father and my brother reviewed for Page 6 magazine when I was growing up. There's even a couple there that I wrote about, where I got my start in writing about video games and being involved in, quote unquote, the industry. And it's been quite a lonely passion over the years, to be perfectly honest. My wife is wonderfully supportive of it. If you look at the decor in this room, this is all her work. All those shelves she put up for me downstairs in my living room, which I've showed in the previous game room tour video from a few years ago. It's a bit out of date now, but you can see my collection of more recent games from sort of PlayStation 2 onwards is downstairs, and she's been very supportive of my collecting, of my interest in that sort of thing. But she didn't sort of grow up with the culture in the same way that I did, so there's always this slight disconnect in that she supports what I do, but she doesn't necessarily completely understand it. And that's the bit that can be a little bit lonely sometimes. Particularly since I have tried and tried and tried on numerous occasions to involve the people I know, quote unquote, in real life, in reality, my real life friends. I've tried and tried and tried to involve them and get them invested in this stuff in the same way that I am, and they're just not interested. And I won't go into the details of that now, but suffice to say, it's left me feeling a bit lonely and a bit hurt at times. And so coming across stuff like the Game Chasers online, stuff that really spoke to me and inspired me in some ways as well. It was shortly after watching the Game Chasers that I really started to expand my own game collecting, that I got in touch with my parents to try and get all the stuff behind me, that I tried to sort of expand what I was doing with my game collection downstairs. And they're also an inspiration for me starting YouTube as well. Now obviously my YouTube videos don't have anywhere near the production values of a Game Chasers video, but they were still an inspiration. Watching their videos made me think, yeah, okay, if I can't speak to people in real life about this stuff, and if I can't kind of get the interest of the people who are supposedly my real life friends in this, then why don't I take to YouTube like these guys have done? Why don't I take to YouTube and show the broader community and give people a chance to discover this stuff? And like I say, the Game Chasers was a key part of inspiring me to do that in the first place. And that's why it's so saddening that we've lost Billy, because Billy was a wonderful character. He was silly, he was funny, he was a dickhead at times, but he was also knowledgeable, and he was smart, and he was talented, and he was amazing at film editing. And he drew a community together, a community who didn't necessarily know each other directly, a community who wouldn't necessarily meet each other face to face because they were scattered all over the world. He made real life friends with a number of other YouTubers who have, like I say, have all posted their own videos and tributes to him today. And he was just a wonderful figure, someone to look up to, someone to be inspired by. And I'm kind of gutted that he's gone, that we're not going to see anything else from him, and that he had to be taken from us in a not very nice way. He was very obviously suffering near the end, and no one wants to see someone they know, whether it's as someone they know in real life or someone they recognise from things that they've watched on the internet. No one likes to see people suffering. And to see someone as nice and funny and knowledgeable as Billy pass on after suffering what he suffered, it's heartbreaking. It really is. And I'm not sure what else I want to say, really, but I did want to say the things that I have to explain why the Game Chasers was important to me, why I'm so bummed that Billy is no longer with us, and to just pay tribute to him and the community he created and the things he has inspired people to do. Because I'm sure I'm not the only one who watched the Game Chasers and thought, you know what, maybe I will start collecting classic games again, or maybe I'll try and rebuild my collection from when I was young. So that's that, really. That's about everything I wanted to say. Normal business will resume on this channel soon. I've got another Mr. video coming up that will be later this week. I don't know if I'll leave this video up. I'll leave it up for a few days and see how I feel. But I wanted to get a few of those things off my chest, explain how I'm feeling about it as someone who didn't know Billy directly, but who very much had his life touched by Billy and his work. So yeah, I guess it just remains for me to say, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.